I do want to ask you about Michael Flynn, the former national security advisor to President Trump, and the move by the Justice Department last week to dismiss the case against him for lying to the FBI. The president said yesterday that that move is justified because President Obama targeted Flynn. He called it, quote, the biggest political crime in U.S. history. Your former Senate colleague Charles Grassley has added that Flynn was entrapped and asked on the Senate floor, what did Obama and Biden know? When did they know it? So what did you know about those moves to investigate Michael Flynn, and was there anything improper done?
I know nothing about those moves to investigate Michael Flynn.
I do want to press that. You say you didn't know anything about it, but you were reported to be at a January 5th, 2017 meeting where you and the president were briefed on the FBI's plan to question Michael Flynn over those conversations he had with the Russian ambassador Kislyak.
No, I thought you asked me whether or not I had anything to do with him being prosecuted.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was aware that they asked for an investigation, but that's all I know about it, and I don't think anything else.
No, you never did nothing to do about it.
Well, as it turns out, Joe Biden actually did know a lot about the Flynn case, being that he was one of the people who requested he be unmasked on January 12th, 2017. Which just so happens to be the exact same day that Obama awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Well, I guess there's a price on everything. January 12th, 2017. Earlier this morning, Joe Biden had requested General Flynn be unmasked. In fact, there's a whole bunch of big names. Samantha Power, James Clapper, John Brennan, James Comey, on, culminating with Vice President Biden. Now, the problem with this is that they had no precedent to do this. And here's the timeline of events according to the New York Times from about 11 months after this all happened. Okay, so it starts off that on December 28th, President Obama signed an executive order announcing sanctions against Russia for trying to interfere with the 2016 presidential election. The executive order takes effect the next day on December 29th. Well, right off the bat, this is an attempt to create discourse with Russia. And literally, this is less than 1 month before you're out of office, okay? So less than 1 month before you're out of office, he is trying to drum up drama with the Russians. Highly shady. And reason why this is complete BS is that now that all their transcripts are released, we know that all of them under oath said that there was no evidence for Russian collusion. So they had no legitimate reason to think Russians had hacked the election or influenced the election. Yet, despite them all admitting under oath in private, which I'm sure they did not expect to be released, saying that there was zero conclusive evidence, no concrete evidence, nothing, one after the other, all admit this, President Obama still signed an EO announcing sanctions on Russia for something that they know didn't happen, okay? So that right off the bat is ridiculous. That very same day, Kislyak then contacts Flynn, not the other way around. He contacted Flynn in response to this, okay? This is the Russian ambassador. Flynn then apparently tells them that he did not want Russia to escalate, trying to calm the situation, which is what they're freaking out about. I don't understand, like, what do you want him to do? Start a war with Russia? Like, he's trying to de-escalate a BS move by Obama a couple weeks before he's out of office, okay, if it even happened. So, allegedly, he tells Kislyak that he doesn't want Russia to escalate the situation. Then the next day, Putin announces he's not going to take any retaliatory measures, okay? So now you cut down here to January 24th. FBI agents interview Mr. Flynn about his conversations with Mr. Kislyak. He says they didn't ask him to refrain from responding to sanctions, okay? We haven't seen the transcripts. We don't know. So he's saying he didn't remember the conversation. And this is it. This is why they wanted to throw this guy in jail, cost him millions of dollars in legal fees, basically ruined his life over the last 3 years. All because President Obama put sanctions on on Russia for trying to interfere with the 2016 presidential election, even though everyone behind the scenes states invariably that they had no evidence of that. So a really responsible move here by someone who's about to leave office in a couple weeks. Then they call Flynn, as to which Flynn then calls back and says, please don't escalate the situation, allegedly. And then when they go and interview him a couple weeks later, he says that he doesn't remember the conversation. And they're saying that, oh, we know you had the conversation. You lied to us. Now we're going to put you in jail forever. That's what this whole Flynn thing is about. This is a complete hit job. And furthermore, according to the 302s, Flynn says right off the bat that it was possible. Flynn stated it was possible that he talked to Kislyak on the issue, but if he did not remember doing so. How is this a lie? And that's the point. It wasn't a lie. This was a setup from the beginning, okay? That conversation occurred on December 29th. Here's Samantha Power requesting to unmask Flynn November 30th, December 2nd, December 7th, December 14th, December 23rd. All right, Clapper, December 2nd. And then on the very day, well, the day before, December 28th. Kelly Dugan, December 6th. John Brennan, December 14th, December 15th. They were going after Flynn. This is a story of someone being targeted. And again, these are people, Samantha Power, behind closed doors, had this to say. This is Mr. Gowdy saying, all right, and I asked specifically about candidate Trump, would the answer be the same for those that were part of his official campaign, but not the candidate himself? Independent evidence of collusion, coordination, conspiracy between the Russian government and officials and official members of the campaign that would not otherwise be known by others. Mrs. Power, again, I am not in possession of anything. I am not in possession and did not read or absorb information that came from outside the intelligence community. Yet she's got no evidence, yet before they're even in office, they're trying to get dirt on Michael Flynn, okay? James Clapper, 3 requests, one December 2nd, only a freaking month after the election. But behind closed doors, he was asked, like Jake Tapper and those guys, when did you first become aware of the late December conversations between General Flynn and Ambassador Kislyak? Sometime after the New Year's holiday. It would have been the first week in January. All right, well then why were you asking on December 28th and December 2nd, before the call even happened? Again, this is someone who said under oath, I was not aware, to my knowledge, of any direct content knowledge of collusion between the Trump camp and the Russians. Yet nevertheless, they kicked these events into action, then had Michael Flynn contacted after he was already unmasked by half the Obama administration, okay? Then bum rushed him on January 24th, and Comey actually is quoted as saying, we knew it was early enough, we could go in without procedure, that they just sent people in and tried to catch him in a lie, which according to the 302s wasn't even a lie. And while this whole entrapment scheme was going on, the news was doing what it always does. It was praising Obama and running distractions so no one would watch what this guy actually did. It was the same for his entire 8 years. I mean, look, that same week while all that was going on, here's January 17th. Guy's only got 3 days left in office, okay? These are the pardons he granted with just 3 days left in office. Here's just stop at one. Here's one is a coke dealer. Here's someone was pardoned for giving false statements to federal investigators. So think about that for a second. While they were in the process of, quote, trying to get General Flynn to lie so they can prosecute him and or get him fired, which we just went over was a complete scam, and they didn't achieve their goal of doing that. But while they were in the process of trying to set him up for this, President Obama was pardoning James Edward Cartwright for actually giving false statements to federal investigators. I mean, that is just insane. Here's wrongful use of coke. Now, some of these, I think there's way too many people in jail, so I'd probably agree with some of these. Nothing that comes to mind right off the bat, but this is what this guy was doing. Here you go. Most of them, a lot of them are coke dealers. Importation of cocaine into the United States. Tequila, Monette, Love. Pardon. Here you go. Coke. These are people importing coke into the U.S. And so much more. Here's a guy, bank embezzlement. Healthcare fraud. Oh, I thought, Obama was this big bastion of healthcare, right? Here's another one. Importation of cocaine. All these pardons. Now, just think about it. And, that's not all his pardons. They go on forever. But just think about, what did the news do when Trump made those few pardons a couple months ago? They lost their mind. And they ran hit piece after hit piece on how horrible he was and how he could pardon these people and how insane it was, right? Everyone remembers that, correct? Well, just for a gauge, Bill Clinton, he pardoned, commuted, or rescinded the convictions of 459 people, okay? George Bush, 200 people. Barack Obama, 1,927 people, okay? To date, Donald Trump is up to 35. 35. One of which is Dinesh D'Souza, Joe Arpaio, Alice Johnson, Blagojevich. These are the few that they freaked out about. Okay, so he's up to 35. That's how the news covers 35 pardons. This is how the news covers 2,000 pardons. By helping Barack Obama create the false narrative that Russia tried to spy on our elections, even though all of his people said behind closed doors that there was zero evidence of that. But they instead went along with this, leaked that this conversation happened, even though they contacted Flynn, and they had been targeting him since long before they concocted their little scheme, okay? Because that's what this was. This was a scheme to try and set up Michael Flynn, and all the while the news ran cover for them while they did whatever the hell they wanted. They are two sides of the same corrupt faction. The MSM and the DNC and the Obama administration were attached at the hip. If we had real news in this country, they would be livid right now. They would be, oh my God, because that would mean that they got taken up by the hoax too, and they'd be going crazy and they'd be sifting through these interviews. But no, it's got to be people like me sifting through these interviews because they refuse to. Because this isn't news to them. They knew it was a hoax. They are accessories. They are the biggest accessories to this hoax. They went out of their way to help perpetrate it over and over and over and over again. And they're still doing it. As these things are coming out, they're still deceptively editing things. They're still getting caught with stuff. Here's Chuck Todd deceptively cutting off Bill Barr's statement the other day to make it sound sinister. Watch this.
You brought up Bill Barr. Peggy Noonan, I want you to listen to this Bill Barr answer to a question about what will history say about this. Wait till you hear this answer. Take a listen.
When history looks back on this decision, how do you think it will be written?
Well, history's written by the winner, so it largely depends on who's writing the history.
I was struck, Peggy, by the cynicism of the answer. It's a correct answer, but he's the Attorney General. He didn't make the case that he was upholding the rule of law. He was almost admitting that, yeah, this is a political job.
Boy, that is some nerve for them to talk about a political job. And then he says he doesn't make the case that he was upholding the rule of law. Well, here's the full, uncut answer where, yes, he makes exactly that case. So Chuck Todd was literally and purposefully deceiving his viewers.
When history looks back on this decision, how do you think it will be written?
Well, history's written by the winner, so it largely depends on who's writing the history. But I think a fair history would say it was a good decision because it upheld the rule of law. It upheld the standards of the Department of Justice, and it undid what was an injustice.
Which is so true. I mean, we just went through it. This is real justice. If you actually go over what happened and what they were trying to put this guy in jail for, it is insane. But nevertheless, the mainstream media doesn't care about any of that. The mainstream media isn't real. It is a weapon. Their only job right now is to spin hatred against President Trump while simultaneously running cover for Barack Obama. Case in point, Joe Scarborough.
This is a shameful day for the Department of Justice, and that shame lies squarely on the Attorney General's shoulders.
Oy, oy.
A shameful day, he calls it. That's what Joe Scarborough thinks of Michael Flynn being exonerated, that it was a shameful day. All right. Just a quick reminder, Joe Scarborough is a former congressman who had to abruptly resign in May of 2001 due to rumors that he was having an affair. Then, 2 months later, in July of 2001, the body of his aide, Lori Klasutis, was found dead in his office with, surprise, surprise, no witnesses. The coroner, who had already lost his right to practice medicine in Missouri for, quote, making false statements, first lied and said that there was no signs of trauma on the body or any indication of foul play, even though later he admitted that the body had a scratch and a bruise. He then wrote off the 2 huge eggshell fractures bashed in the back of her head as happening from the fall because she had, quote, fainted from a weak heart. Now, she was a 28-year-old marathon runner. But don't ask Joe about it, because not only did he call ABC and different local media within hours to tell them that she had a, quote, complicated medical history, which the family then had to say absolutely not, and point out that she was in great shape and literally ran marathons, but he also apparently thinks it's a big joke.
You've got to listen.
Well, tell me what I need to do.
Well, no, you're doing great. I mean, don't be afraid to be funny.
Okay.
Because you are funny. That was I asked you why you weren't in Congress. You said you'd had sex with the intern, then you had to kill her.
Exactly.
I mean, that's pretty risky to say.
What are you going to do?
So it could be, you can be very good. I mean, I'm
Hey, what are you going to do? Hey, big joke. Now, if someone who had worked for you for 2 years had their head bashed in and died in your own office, wouldn't someone making a joke out of that only 2 years after the fact infuriate you? That's funny? No investigation? Just the word of a disgraced coroner? So just to recap, Joe Scarborough is fine that this case never even saw the light of day, but thinks it's shameful that a highly respected general isn't going to go to jail for telling the FBI that he possibly made a phone call instead of saying he definitely made a phone call. Whoa. Joe Scarborough, ladies and gentlemen, getting to the bottom of what's important in this country. Just like his colleagues who are constantly caught deceptively editing and lying to their audience, and just like the Democrats' presidential nominee who lied right to George Stephanopoulos without even batting an eye. Yeah, that's what you want in the White House. Where we go one, we go all.
This shocked both political parties, and it is much of a threat to the Republican establishment that has run Washington, D.C. for the past 30 years, as it is for the Democratic Party establishment, who now really has a civil war on their hand, a political battle.
We called Donald Trump many months ago a middle finger to the establishment in this country,
Primal
to Washington,
scream.
to us in the media, and his voters gave the big middle finger last night.